Hi everyone, welcome to our March Ask Us Anything. My name is Ellie Burke. I'm on the marketing team here at Classy. I'm a content writer, and today I'm sitting down with Ben Cipollini, the manager of our data insights team. We're going to be discussing growth today, specifically as it relates to the Classy 100. And for those of you who don't know, the Classy 100 is an annual list that's released of top growing nonprofits on the Classy platform. All right, but before we dive into that conversation around growth, I just want to provide a little bit more background information around Ben and his specific experience.
Thank you.
So he received his PhD in cognitive science from UC San Diego. There, his research focused on analyzing and modeling brain data, particularly in open data sets and through open source programming. He also has extensive industry experience, including 4 years at Microsoft, as well as having founded and sold a small web startup that was built on top of data aggregation. But before coming to Classy, he also contributed to open data and open source initiatives in both education and government. And since then, he now leads our engineering effort in collecting and understanding social impact data at Classy, and he leads the data insights team. So Ben, do you want to speak a little bit more to how that plays out in your role here specifically at Classy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came on to start looking at some of our internal data about donations and online fundraising through peer-to-peer campaigns, as well as our charities, just understanding how that entire pipeline of acquiring and keeping donors and fundraisers work, so that we can start sharing back some insights about that ecosystem to our customers.
Great. So to give you a better idea of how Classy defines growth, specifically as it relates to the Classy 100, Ben's going to walk us through the growth score and how it was calculated to rank these 100 organizations. And while Ben gives us that overview, please feel free to send questions in via the comments section, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ellie. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about the Classy 100, and really excited to hear what questions people have about our approach. But I wanted to start to give a little context, give a little history about the Classy 100. It actually started as a Classy 25 in 2014 and expanded out as we expanded into a Classy 100 in 2015. Those were focused on lifetime revenue on the Classy platform. We switched it up this year really in recognition of the idea that growth and a growth mindset is important to build scalable impact, something that we really follow as a company and that we want to kind of promote in our customers. And so we created a growth score. The idea was to encapsulate the different aspects of growth into one place, but at the same time, not to limit the different stories that are contained in there, so we could have a diversity of stories and customers in there.
Awesome. Thank you for that information around the history. I guess at this point, I'm going to ask you to kind of put on your professor hat at this point and dive into the metrics around how we specifically went about defining that growth.
Sure. That sounds great. I can do this.
Great.
Awesome. So there's really three core components to our growth score. The first one here is consistent growth, and this is the kind of most important core idea that we wanted to promote. It's not just big spikes in growth, but something that leads to scalable impact. But that was also the hardest to measure. The second is the amount of growth, right? You may grow consistently, but you may be very small or very big. So those are, I think, independent things there. And then the third is kind of your overall revenue on Classy. The reason we cared about that is it's easy. We think it may be a little bit easier to grow when you're smaller than when you're larger. And so we want to add that as part of the growth score again, so we could have a diversity of stories in there. So let me jump into the actual metrics that we use. That's just at a high level. So for consistent growth, we actually measured the number of months that showed kind of above platform change. Let me explain what that means. Above platform change. Okay, so I'm going to draw a little graph here. As many of the viewers probably know, if you're involved in nonprofit fundraising, there's a lot of seasonality in fundraising and in donations.
Certainly.
So months. So let's say we've got January, through December. And so it doesn't look like a flat line. It actually looks like a curve that looks something like this. So around April, you get a peak, and as well as the end of the year, and a dip in the summer. Now, this makes it really hard to do any month-to-month types of calculations. So what we tried to do is we just took 1 month from the next, so let's say from March to April, and you can see maybe there's a 10% growth there, right? So the expectation is that any customer without growth would just go up and down according to the seasons.
Okay.
So we said if you're above that, if you're at 15% or 20% or 50% from March to April, that you've done something, you've shown growth above kind of this baseline. And in the same way, you can use that to start measuring, let's say from August to September, where you expect a decrease. That's a minus 10% decrease that everybody else is seeing, and you're at minus 5%. We're saying that's growth. You're doing something better than what you would expect normally.
I see.
And so we took all those different segments and we counted them up, and we say, how many times did you achieve that? And so what we saw is actually is between 1 and 8 for that number. Okay, so I'm going to finish that one. Let's see. That's not the way to do it. I'm going to move this to the side, and I want to talk about the amount of growth.
Great.
Okay. So this was much easier. This is your regular, percent year-over-year growth. And so this was a factor, again, I think 1.25 to 8x growth. We capped it at 8x growth because, again, our main focus was that consistent growth, and we didn't want the amount of growth to overwhelm it. We just wanted it to be one factor. And so we had these two. We add them together, the idea being kind of they're not related to each other necessarily, so let's keep them somewhat independent. And then we just scale that whole thing by revenue on Classy with a trick on Classy. So the trick is, an org that raises $100,000 or $1 million, that's a 10 times difference. If we just use the revenue on Classy, that's going to make it's going to skew way to the big org. So we didn't want that, so we just use the little log function here. Log just takes something that's in a line, and it just tapers it off as you get bigger. So the effect of size decreases as you get to the really big sizes. So it's there, but not such a big deal. And so that's pretty much it. I think we're going to link to a PDF in the text of the live stream, and that will actually talk you through the formula there as well.
Great. And then could you touch just on why that was so important to do the log of the revenue?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. If we didn't use the log of the revenue, then the smaller organizations would get blown away because the larger organizations would be raising 10 or 100 or 1,000 times more, and so as a multiplier on the growth score, they'd be at the top. And so this allows, again, that diversity of stories by scaling it back and being a smaller factor.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks for all that insight. And for those of you who recently joined us, we're sitting down to talk about how Classy defines growth and how we created the metrics for the Classy 100 growth score. And Ben just went through the equation for us. And for those of you who don't know who are just tuning in, the Classy 100 is an annual list of top growing nonprofits on Classy's platform. And we're actually going to move into some Q&A now for anyone who has any questions around how this calculation was done or about the Classy 100 and the growth in general. So thank you for submitting questions. And I'm just going to look at those comments right now to see. All right, we have a couple from Will. If you don't mind, Ben, answering for him. How did you determine the seasonal fluctuation that's included in the score?
Yeah, absolutely. So for each year since 2011, we took each month's revenue and we just divided by the total revenue for that year to get a percentage. And then once we have that percentage for each year, we can average 2011 percentages to 2012, 2013, all the way through 2015. And you just see great consistency. The reason you need to do that normalization is because we're growing as a platform. So if you just add them all together, 2011, add up all the Januaries over all those years, 2015 will blow away all the others. So we want to see what the seasonal fluctuation was per year and then average over the years.
Great. All right, and then Tracy had a question. If an organization was using Classy for a particular partial year in 2015, can they be included in the list?
Yeah, absolutely. So because our focus was on this consistent growth within 2016, we didn't want to have a full year of 2015. So we did include organizations. They had to have some baseline level of revenue within 2015, but not a full year's revenue. Okay,
great. And then one question that I know has come up before that I think is really important to think through as well is just how is the Classy 100 different than the Classy Awards?
Right. Right, so this is near and dear to my heart because, as you mentioned, I work on the social impact data at Classy, and a lot of that works with the Classy Awards. And so being able to work on these two projects has been awesome. But yeah, they're very different. For me, the main idea is that Classy 100 is about 100 of our clients, nonprofits that are using Classy, and how they grew in 2016. And Classy Awards is about anybody. Anybody can apply. Anybody can share that social impact data. And that gets judged by a leadership council, 100 members of our community, for the Classy Award. So one is about usage of our platform and our customers, and the other is about anybody, right, and social impact data.
Great. All right, we had one more question come in from Allison. Are organizations who joined in 2016 included in the data?
Yeah, so we required, no. We required all 12 months, again, so we could see that consistent growth and some baseline amount in 2015, yeah.
Great. And Tori just came in with a question. What are some trends you noticed about the Classy 100 nonprofits, kind of looking at them in general?
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of different stories in there. So I don't want to say like the trend was that there was no trend, but I do want to say that, and it was actually really important to us that the metric allow that. So, we saw people growing because they increased their usage of Classy. We saw people grow because they changed their usage. They hopped on our new peer-to-peer and really went down that road, or they increased their recurring donations, for example, or maybe doing more kind of donations in general and not expanding out from events and things like that. It was pretty diverse, which is one of the reasons I felt happy with what we came up with, yeah. That's
great to hear. All right. Well, if anyone has any other questions, definitely feel free to shoot us an email at marketing@classy.org, and we'll be sure to get you an answer straight away. I really appreciate everyone joining us today. Let me just make sure we don't have any additional questions. I'm not seeing any right now. So I just want to thank everyone for the Classy community for listening in. And do send us additional questions if any come up. And make sure to check out the other 100 organizations. Ben was just talking about the trends that he saw. We definitely encourage you to check them out and how different they are in achieving their impact. And you can be sure to do that at classy.org/Classy100.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.